Hey, Big Blue Banter listener, would you like an extra $500? That's a lot of cash. Go to bluewirepods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. This survey will help create a better advertising experience for audiences and, in turn, help this show. That's bluewirepods.com/survey, where all you have to do is answer some simple questions for a chance to win $500. Make sure to read the full terms and disclaimer, plus complete the survey for a chance to win. bluewirepods.com/survey. The link is also in the show notes of this episode.
Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier. Joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. We hope you enjoyed our deep dives into the best case scenarios for the offense and the defensive side of the ball in 2024. And for those of you, and guess what? It worked. We had 459 likes on the offensive preview, the best case scenario for the offense video, which obviously boosted the views and helped us. So I'm going to ask again, please, if you enjoyed the show, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Not as many likes for the defensive show, which obviously didn't get a lot of views because of that. So there's a quick correlation there. It's also, it just came out a day later. So there's other factors, extenuating factors in play here, but please just help us improve the show by liking it. Lot coming up for you. We have today's show, which is going to be a combo of things. We're going to do stat projections like we do every year. Nick's stat predictions. I'm going to give an over-under on all of them. And then we are going to do our final record predictions for the 2024 season for the New York Giants. Remember, in 2022, both Nick and I nailed it, 9-8. Unbelievable. We didn't say 9-7-1, which I think is what the final record was with the tie. We screwed that up, but we were a half game off. Last year, not so much. I think we had either 9 or 10 wins. I don't remember. The Giants only got to 6. So we'll see what happens this year, obviously. But Nick, let's start off. Let's do some stat predictions. So let's start with some fun ones. The Giants, I like this one you started us with here. Total points for the Giants. You have us projected at 372, which would be 21.8 points per game. That would put them on par with the Chiefs of last year. Now, remember, the Chiefs had a down season last year. Their offense wasn't what it was.
Scoring-wise. They were a defensive team, and they had Darius Slayton as their wide receiver. The Chiefs ended up finishing last year 15th in the NFL, which coincidentally was the same position the Giants finished in 2022. And these aren't necessarily my predictions. These are my set on what I feel like is a realistic over-under. I'm also picking the over-under as well.
Oh, I like that. Okay, it's even more fun then. Okay, so this is just a number that Nick and I have to work with and we have to decide. So that would be 21.8 points per game. Again, like you said, on par with their 2022 season. In 2023, with all the injuries, the Giants had the 30th most points per game at 266. So, Nick, you can start us off. Are you taking the over or under on 15th best in the NFL, 21.8?
And then in 2022, the Giants had 365, which again finished 15th. I am going to take slightly under on 372 total points, which is a 21.8 points per game. But I think the Giants are going to hover around that number. That's why I picked it, because it to me, look, some of these scoring, it can be a little fluky. You look and it's like the Chiefs finished 15th last year. No one would have predicted that, but it's also because their defense was dominant and they didn't have to really pour it on teams into the fourth quarter. And they also didn't really have any wide receivers, which put a much higher precedent on Isaiah Pacheco and the rushing attack. I think the Giants will be around this number, though. I do. I think they're going to score significantly more points than they did last year, which was 266, and maybe even slightly more than the year prior. So that puts them around 372. But I think a slight smidge under. What about you?
Okay, I like this. I'm going to go over on the 372, 21.8 points per game. I think what we saw from the preseason is going to play out in the regular season, which is a Giants offense that's taking shots early and often. Now, of course, the defense has to cooperate. The looks have to be there, but the looks are going to be there more than ever with Malik Nabers and Jalen Hyatt on the field. And even if Hyatt is off the field and they bring on Slayton, I still think we're going to get those looks that could lead to it. And everything I've heard, Daniel Jones as well, who had that interview with Tyler Dunn where he's like, look, I'm airing it out this year. He basically was like, I'm taking those shots this year. I think it's going to look similar to that early Jones 2019 where he was taking more shots down the field. And what I think we're going to get here, Nick, is more turnovers from Daniel Jones, more interceptions than he's had in the last 3 years, some pick sixes. all sorts of things that will lead to them needing to throw more and needing to put more points on the board. So I think it's just going to be a different tempo for the Giants, a different pace, even in 2022, when they're kind of trying to win games 20-17. And I think they're going to score a lot of points this year. It's going to be a little bit more exciting to watch, a lot more exciting, hopefully, to watch this Giants offense. So going with the over here.
All right. Total points against. We have 394, which is 23.2 points per game. That's the number. We are guessing over under on that. That is on par with the Detroit Lions and the Miami Dolphins from last year, which ranked around 21st most in the NFL. So what do you think about the 394 total points against surrendered by the Giants defense in 2024?
I'll go slightly under on this one, Nick. So I just made the case about how I think they're going to be, playing a more a tempo this year and probably having to put up more production and points. I just think Shane Bowen is the type of coordinator who's going to limit some of these drives to field goals and play a little bend, don't break. I think Brian Burns is going to make a big difference. And I personally feel that Tyler Nubin is going to come right in and not leave too much off the table, or not have too much of a drop off from what they've had. I know that's a contentious point among what people think about, the drop off from McKinney to Nubin. I just think Nubin fits the system so well. And then Adoree. I think Adoree is going to play a bigger role and be more effective than people realize and make a big difference in helping keep this defense pretty effective throughout the year. So the schedule is tough. I will give you that. But it's more tough in the sense that there are teams that have both sides of the ball. Like some of these teams that could be tough for them. The Ravens, the Buccaneers. These are teams that are not like offensive juggernauts. They're just good football teams that won 9 or more games last year. So I don't necessarily think they have the quarterbacks that are just going to, or the players, maybe the Ravens, that can just pour it on the Giants. So I'm going to go with the under here, or the over for the less points.
Yes, you're going the under on the total of 394 points. I am too, but again, just like my number for points for on the offense, it's right around that number. I think the Giants will surrender more points than they score. And I don't know if that's going to be just because they lose a bunch of games. We'll probably talk about that throughout this episode, or it's because they get blown out in a game or two, which the Giants have become a little bit accustomed to doing over the last couple seasons. I don't think they're going to be as easy to blow out with the offensive line that they have, but still there's going to be mistakes on the offensive side of the football. I think there are holes in the defense that can be exploited still, even with the addition of Adoree Jackson. I think they can be exploited by some really quick processing quarterbacks and efficient offenses. So I'm going to go slightly under, but I still think they'll surrender more points than they score.
All right, Nick, let's do these piecemeal. Daniel Jones over unders. Start with 3,800 passing yards, which would be a career high for him by far.
So Dan, I want to go into this and say we have to project all 17 games for these guys. That's how I went into this with the stats when I wrote all these down. But for Daniel Jones, there's a little bit of a caveat there because he has that injury guarantee. And if the New York Giants are not in playoff contention late in November into December, I think it's safe to say that Daniel Jones might not be the starting quarterback if the Giants have already made the decision that they're moving on from Daniel Jones. So I'm going to factor that into Daniel Jones specifically. And with that, the 3,800 yard mark, I'm going to go under. If he does play 17 games, I am going to say, though, I think he'll go over 3,800 yards with Malik Nabers, with the defense maybe being not as good as Brian Daboll would like, resulting in more throwing and a more stable offensive line. It's going to allow Daniel Jones to maybe air it out a little bit more downfield if he sees it quick enough. So if he plays 17, I think he'll go over the 38. But if the Giants are out, which we'll talk about in a little bit later on in the show, then I would take the under. And I feel like I'm playing both sides of the fence with that answer. So I'm just going to sit here and say over because the Giants will be in playoff contention late in the season.
And that's what the decision basically comes down to. Like on the bold prediction show, I think we both took an over on Jones yardage, or I know I said bold prediction will break 4,000. That was contingent on the Giants winning games. All the Daniel Jones over unders are contingent on them being in playoff contention, because there's just no way, shape, or form I could see them starting him in week 16, 17, 18, 15, even if they're out of contention at that point, because we already saw this happen with Derek Carr 2 years ago in Vegas. We already saw this happen last year with Russell Wilson in Denver. They're not going to be the stupid team that just grinds him through the end of the season if the games are meaningless and they're out of playoff contention, when if he gets one season-ending injury, they now have to pay $25 million more guaranteed for next season. Like, they're not stupid. Like, only a complete imbecile of a GM would ever do that. So this is all contingent on them being in contention, the Giants and Daniel Jones. I'm going to say that they will be in contention, but I think it's a safer play for me to take the under here because obviously, even if it's like week 17, Nick, or week 18, and they're out of it playoff wise, they're still going to bench him.
Yeah, betting 101, you're going to take the under on a lot of these season long bets anyway. That's why I kind of wanted to avoid that. But Daniel Jones is a little bit of a unique case. And I don't know if you know this, Dan, but Joe Shane, he might be in the quarterback market, which is like groundbreaking news.
Yeah, I mean, look, Giants Twitter makes a mountain out of every molehill in the history of the world. But apparently what Joe Shane said last night on Hard Knocks is ruffling some feathers and getting people worked up because he was caught on a hot mic with Ryan Poles, the Bears GM, being like, it must be so nice to not have to come to these games and scout quarterbacks anymore. Like, dude, the guy got a generational prospect in Caleb Williams. What do you like? Isn't this the most obvious stuff in the world, Nick, that he feels Joe Shane like you don't have to worry about it? And we already know from Hard Knocks that Joe Shane was trying to trade up for a quarterback. We knew that anyway because every single big reporter reported it, but it was confirmation. So like, why was that pissing people off, Nick? Like, I don't understand like what Joe Shane did. Some people say, look, it's 2 days before season starts or whatever. He's not supposed to publicly undermine his starting quarterback. But like, the cat's out of the bag. Daniel Jones saw Hard Knocks. Daniel Jones commented on Hard Knocks and said, I was surprised and hurt by it. So now, like, this is not any new information, is it?
No, it's not. But hey, last time Daniel Jones had his back really pressed against the wall, he put a 2022 playoff winning season together. So hell, put his back up against the wall again if we can get that result.
Yeah, and I just don't know why people would blame Joe Shane for that. Like, I don't know.
Well, it's the giving the money to Daniel Jones, a quarterback
that
that a lot of these people do not buy into. And I completely understand, and there's merit to that argument. I think there's a little bit more to it as well because there wasn't really too many options to add a quarterback. And if you go back, we talked about it so much. If you go back to that time period, if you were just going to be like, all right, we want a playoff game. We showed promise. We already declined your 5th-year option. You know what? You can go and walk. I think the people who have that opinion that we're speaking about, though, would say he wouldn't get a lot on the open market and then you can get him at a discount. That is a significant risk, though. And it's easier for us to say that than it is for a general manager who needs to at least put a competent enough quarterback back there to field a team that can possibly compete for the playoffs again, which they did not last season. Let's hope they can this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be not disingenuous, but I think it would be bad process by this GM to have the other that say, be like, we're both sitting in such a good spot here with franchise quarterbacks. Like, we can't be saying, you know what I mean? Like, Joe Shane should be looking for this position, just like every other position the Giants don't have locked up. Andrew, they don't need a left tackle. So I'm sure he's not saying, oh, look at that left tackle on Clemson. It's nice to not have to worry about that. But like every position they need, he should be scouting. He should be doing his due diligence as a general manager. So I just personally didn't have a problem with it. But again, as you mentioned, Giants Twitter finds a way to this. It's not even Giants Twitter's fault, Nick. I think when you're just losing for 10 years straight as a franchise, all this stuff is amplified.
Like, I understand that, of course, right? People are going to overreact when you keep putting a mediocre product out there. When fans are paying so much money to go to these games and they care so much about this franchise, and this franchise consistently puts a poor or subpar product out there, you're going to get very frustrated, especially when the quarterback that the general manager in this entire franchise is purportedly backing publicly and then behind closed doors, they're not. It kind of feels like you're just slapping the fan base in the face. That's how some of these people, I believe, take it. And I can understand that at some level.
Yeah, me too. Let's get back to these over-unders. 21.5 passing touchdowns for Jones, which would be the second most of his career.
Second most of his career. Rookie season, he had 24. I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over that if he plays the games, of course.
I'm going to go over that even if he doesn't make it the full season, Nick. And I think he's going to throw. I think that it's going to be a little bit more exciting to watch this offense this year. I think he's going to throw for touchdowns. Obviously, I know at this point I'm taking a big leap considering he's thrown for like 15, 12, 10 in 3 of his seasons. And obviously he had the one season of 24. I just feel like Nabers may be the difference here in this entire thing. And that may not just mean Nabers is the guy racking those touchdowns up, but it may mean that he opens up this one-on-one for Hyatt or Slayton or Wandell, or a little bit of space underneath for Wandell to make a post-catch move and get himself in the end zone. I also think it's possible they can use Tyrone Tracy to get 3, 4, 5 receiving touchdowns this year if things break right there. Theo Johnson is a guy who could be a big red zone threat for the Giants, and I think he could add some touchdowns to the mix. So I just think there's more weapons to work with and a better offensive line, hopefully. So I think the over on that is pretty safe.
Passing interceptions, 11.5.
I'm taking the over here, and I feel confident about this one. It's a fair number considering he hasn't thrown a lot of picks in the last 3 years, or I guess ever since really 2019. But that was with the lowest average depth of target basically in the entire NFL. And, one offense with Jason Garrett that was as safe as it can possibly be. And he just wasn't really trying anything. But this year, that's all out the door. I really do believe. I don't think Jones is going to be able to lean on that conservative nature anymore. And I don't think Brian Dable's going to accept that. I think Brian Dable's like, I'll take the picks as long as I get a chance to actually make something happen in the passing game. So I think he'll try to make something happen in the passing game. And I don't think he's one of those rare quarterbacks who can take a lot of shots and avoid interceptions. We saw 2 interceptions in the preseason and 1/2 from Daniel Jones one against the first team defense. I don't know if even the second was against the first team. It still was. It was Stingley. But look, yeah, it was both against first team team. But look, that was it. You're taking shots and you're throwing picks while doing so. So I still think there's going to be some of those trap coverage interceptions like the one we almost saw. So it was 2 interceptions against Texans and almost a third where Stingley jumped the route and just missed the interception. I think we'll see a few of those. So I think the over here is a pretty safe number.
I'm going to go with the over as well.
How about 500 rushing yards right after coming off the ACL?
Yeah, 500 rushing yards is tough. I am going to have slightly under, but I think he'll be like 480 plus. So I think it's going to hover around that number. Daniel Jones will get his games with like 30. He might have one with like 60. I think he's going to be good for fantasy, getting you an extra couple points here and there, but I'm going to take slightly under on the 500.
I'll take the over. I just think he's the type of human being, Nick, that just doesn't give an F. Like, I think he's just going to go right back to running the same way, putting his body on the line the same way he has throughout his career. That's led to 2 major neck injuries or 1 major neck injury, 1 4-game neck injury where he came back and did not look good against the Raiders throwing the football before the injury. And the ACL, this is just the type of player he is. He's balls. This is why the teammates love him, because he puts his body on the line. And that's why he's loved among the Giants, locker room. And so I don't think that's going to just change. I think that would take away too much of who he is as a quarterback. So I think we'll get a lot of rushing yards this year. Again, this is obviously contingent on him staying healthy. And I think if he does get benched for the injury guarantee, this will probably be an under, but I'm willing to take the over.
Devin Singletary, 950 rushing yards. And before you answer that, I want you to guess how many he had last year.
So he wasn't starter for the Texans until the very end. But he did have a role all season long. I would guess he had like 890 last year.
It's a good guess. He had 986. He's never gone over 1,000 yards, but Devin Singletary had 986 in 2023, 892 in 2022, 977 in 2021 with Brian Dable, 750 in 2020, and 833 in 2019. And we know he also adds value as a receiver. He kind of deceptively has had more yardage than I originally thought before I dove into the stats.
He's a good player. He's an underrated player. We're going to find that out this year, but I'm taking the under here, Nick. I think part of why I'm taking the under is he barely eclipsed this mark last year, the Texans, and Bobby Slowick actually had a really high neutral run rate. They are a run-based system, that Shanahan tree, and they had a lot of leads that the Giants, I'm not so sure, are going to have. So those 2 factors at play here. 1, not sure the Giants will be leading as many games as the Texans. 2, not as many light boxes. And 3, just not having the run-centric focus. I think Dable will really morph this thing into a pass-heavy attack this year, from a neutral pass rate and all those, advanced stats. So I'm going to take the under here.
I am also taking the under, but I think Devin Singletary, if he does not get injured, he will have over 900 yards. So it's going to be right in this area. Like, I'm taking slightly under and slightly over on all of these numbers. I'm going to take the slight under here. I think Singletary, man, the reason why I'm taking the slight under is Tyrone Tracy Jr., who is going to be more of a factor. Look, the guy was taking first team reps like a lot in practice. And it wasn't just these like quick little screens or these quick little checks. It wasn't anything like that. It was, we're going to give you the football off tackle and make Micah McFadden miss in the hole. And he was able to do that quite often in training camp. I think Tyrone Tracy Jr. is an excellent, not to bring fantasy into it again, but he's a good late round fantasy pick in these full point PPR leagues, because he's going to have a role if he can get and stay healthy by week 1.
Really good final round bench stash for you if you still have your fantasy drafts. And if he's on your waiver wire, definitely someone worth stashing. 5 rushing TDs for Devin Singletary, over under.
I'm going to go slightly under. Again, now I think Eric Gray could factor into this. Devin Singletary is going to be the primary back, but if Devin Singletary has like 15 touches in a game, they might put Eric Gray out there once in a while. Like, I don't think Eric Gray is going to have like 30 carries this year. He's going to have a role. It's not going to be as pronounced as Tyrone Tracy Jr. and Devin Singletary, but I'm going to go slightly under with 5. He's had 5 in the last 2 years consecutively. He had 10 back in 2021, which was the last year with Brian Dable. Maybe something to factor in there, but I'm going to go under.
What's up, everybody? It's Jerry Ferrara. I've got a new podcast called Throwbacks with Heisman Trophy winner Matt Leinart. where we will be talking about all things sports, all things pop culture, and all things about our lives. From football locker rooms to Hollywood green rooms, we've got you covered. We're your weekly destination for the games you want to hear about and the stories you won't forget. Listen to Throwbacks on Apple Podcasts or Spotify with new episodes every Thursday.
What's up, big Blue Banter listeners? I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. And all of Mint Mobile's plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/BBB. That's mintmobile.com/BBB. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/BBB. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
So, very strong offensive system there, and obviously playing with Josh Allen. Having said that, the Giants' run game has been a big part of their red zone offense since these two arrived, Dable and Kafka. It's really, utilizing Jones' ability to run, the zone read, things like that nature, bootlegs, different types of, I guess I would say misdirection that could ultimately lead up to Devin Singletary is a really good inside runner. It's just a matter of, I guess, the role he'll have in the red zone, because I also think Eric Gray may be a factor in the red zone, and potentially Tyrone Tracy as well, Nick. There's no guarantee he won't. I'm going to take the over, though. I think he's a good enough inside runner that he'll get above 5 touchdowns this year.
He's a better inside runner than people give him credit for, given the fact that he's like 5'7", 200 pounds.
Well, I think, again, this goes back to something we always talk about, and I always like to bring up. I don't know that actually works against him. I think that low center of gravity and that leverage that he has actually kind of helps him as a runner in the tight spaces.
You're right. I think people have a misconception of him, though, that he's like a scat back, and he's a little bit more than that. Just because he is undersized.
Pound for pound, such a strong player, pound for pound. All right, let's get to some fun ones. Malik Nabers over unders, 85 catches.
I have over.
I would be stunned if he doesn't get over, if he plays all 17 games, 85 catches, because I'm really projecting, Nick, about 160 targets. Seems lofty, but again, I think this is going to be a pass-first attack that's passing early and often, using the pass to open the run game, and he is the focal point. So I'm thinking 160 targets, and if he catches, if he was only to make a little above 50% of his targets, let's say, turned catchable, that would shock me, given what I've seen from him at the catch point.
All right, what about 100? Let's bump it up by 15.
Okay. I'm still taking the over. What about you?
Oh, I love it, dude. That's spicy. So I had him breaking, one of my bold takes was he's going to break all the rookie receiving records. I think it's definitely possible, man. So I'm going to take the over as well. And I know that is lofty, but the Giants are not going to be, I don't think the Giants are going to be dominating teams to where they're running the clock out too often. And you're going to be in comeback mode. That's how they had success back in 2022. If we go back to 2022, how many comebacks did the Giants have early in that season? A lot. Now you have Malik Nabers. The offense is just entirely centralized around Malik Nabers. So 100 catches with his skill set, with all the targets and the opportunity that he's going to have, he's going to command what? Like a 30% target share, a 28% target share. 100 catches within the realm of possibility with his skills.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson had 28% target share last year. I think that's about what Malik Nabers will get this year, which is a massive, massive target share. All right, 1,550 receiving yards over under for Nabers.
That's 1,150.
Sorry, 1,150 receiving yards. 1,550 would be insane.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over there as well. I don't think it's going to quite be like Jamar Chase 14. I think he had like 1,450, 1,460, but it's going to be more than 1,150. So I'm taking the over.
Yeah, look, my prediction, Nick, the entire time for Nabers' rookie season was very similar to Jalen Waddle's rookie season. That was before McDaniel got there and they revamped their offense. What that was an insane amount of targets, insane amount of receptions, a great amount of yards, and not a lot of touchdowns. So the over here as well for me, but not a huge over, a slight over here.
What about receiving touchdowns at 8.5?
I'm taking the under here. It's just a lot of touchdowns for a team that hasn't thrown for a lot of touchdowns. And I did say that Jones will potentially get over the 21.5 passing touchdowns, which I think he will. But I don't think it's like he's firing off 30 or 35. I think it's more in that mid-20s range, in which case, Nabers would have to get over a third of the touchdowns. And I just think in the red zone, we've seen enough unique designs from Kafka and Dable as well, where there will be just like touchdowns that go to the tight ends, Bellinger, Manhurts, like you said, might even get a pair, Theo Johnson, some of the running backs, all the different players on this roster. So I think he won't be as concentrated in the red zone where defenses have an easier time taking him away.
Was the highest receiving touchdown total for a New York Giant in the Daniel Jones era Darius Slayton in 2019?
How many was that?
8.
I think so. Yeah.
I don't believe there's been anybody like who else.
Well, it's hard not to. Like Jones has thrown for 15, 12, and 10 touchdowns
exactly.
in his other years. I think it was 15, 12, and 10 or 11 maybe. So
yeah, I'm taking the slight under as well, especially because I think when the Giants get in the red zone, all eyes are going to be on Malik Nabers,
Right.
and Brian Dable's too good of a coach to not exploit the vulnerabilities with his other talented wide receivers and Jalen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson.
And for the record, this is an over-under of receiving touchdowns. Nick and I both believe there's a chance Nabers can get a rushing touchdown, which wouldn't factor in here.
Give him the jet sweep, baby.
He will. All right. Jalen Hyatt, over-under 45 catches.
I think 45 catches is a good number, man. I kind of want to go push, but I'm going to go slightly over because I believe in the second-year jump that he's taken and all the work that he's put in. So I'm going over 45.
I believe in Jalen Hyatt. I am not concerned, but intrigued by end of training camp rotation I saw between Hyatt and Slayton. Obviously, Slayton had the big play in the Texans preseason game, and then we kind of saw a change in how they're operating in camp. I think that could be not permanent, but it could be how they start the season. And if it is how they start the season, Nick, I think Darius Slayton's too good of a player to just take off the field. So I think he's going to be in a rotation with Slayton. And it's going to be hard for him to rack up that amount of catches in a rotation unless the offense is really one of the best passing offenses. So I'm going to say under.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It is. All right. What about 550 receiving yards?
He's talented enough to beat these numbers, 445 catches and 550, but I'm going to go under again just because opportunity and the combination of opportunity and me not fully sold yet on the Giants pass offense.
Yeah, for 550, I'm going to go under as well, I think. Now, I'm really tempted, though, because if I have over on 45 catches, I think he's going to go for more than 550 receiving yards because his ADOT is probably going to be like 16, 17. Last year, it was 16.2 was his yards per reception. He only had 23 catches last year, and he only caught 57.5% of the balls thrown his way. Hopefully, he can raise that up. Hopefully, he can be more of a receiving threat in the short and intermediate parts of the field and not just we have the one-on-one Tyrod, throw it deep type of receiver. Right. So you know what? Now, screw that, man. I'm going to go over 550 for our guy, Jalen Hyatt. I'm buying into that development, baby, and I'm buying into the fact that he's going to see so much less attention because of Malik Nabers' presence.
How about the 4.5 touchdowns for Hyatt over?
I'm going under there, though.
Under as well for me. Okay, Wan'Dale Robinson over under 72.5 catches. Nice.
I'm going to go over the Wan'Dale Robinson 72.5 catches. Last year, I think he had like 60. So he started the season, on the pup. He ended up coming off, week 3 or something. He got out there. It's a slow transition. He came out after the season saying he didn't really feel 100% until that Green Bay game. There's going to be so many schemed plays underneath against 2 high and cover 4 type of defenses for Wan'Dale Robinson. So I'm going to go over 72.5 catches.
This is a tough one for me because it all depends, Nick, on how the Giants deploy their offense this year. Is there going to be a lot of 12s? Is there going to be these, 21 personnel groupings, even if that means Bellinger at fullback? And I've seen a lot of that so far in camp in the preseason. I also wonder, when they do go to that, will they have Wan'Dale on the field, or will they just view Wan'Dale as such a good piece from a schematic standpoint? Like when we have him on the field, we can use pre-snap motion, we can use him on jet sweeps, we can use him on all these different things that make him eye candy and make our offense more unpredictable, that they can't take him off the field. I'm going to, for this one, lean toward that side of it, that Wan'Dale will be viewed as a piece that they can't take off the field. And it'll be more of a rotation for Hyatt and Slayton, despite them playing more traditional wide receiver roles. So within that, I'm going to say over on catches.
All right. What about 3.5 touchdowns for Wan'Dale Robinson?
Do we do yards yet for him? Or did you do that one?
I did not. My bad. 650
no worries.
yards for Wan'Dale Robinson.
Over for me.
Over for 650 yards. I'm going to go slightly over. Not by too much, though. I don't think Wan'Dale Robinson's going to be 1,000-yard wide receiver. I would absolutely love it. I think he's going to have so many things designed for him behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage, and he has the ability to create yards after the catch, but I don't think he's going to be creating like 20, 30, 40 yards after the catch too frequently, so I'm going to go slightly over on that.
Okay. All right, and then touchdown catches for Wan'Dale at 3.5.
I'm going to go under. I think it will be like 3.
I think it'll be right around 3 too. We've seen some of those red zone designs where they can get him open with rub routes and things of that nature. But outside of that, he's not the guy you expect to either one, do those like long bomb TDs because they don't really use him that much in that regard. And then 2, make those kind of like contested catches in the red zone.
Again, though, I'm conflicted because I know that Malik Nabers is going to command so much attention in the red zone, and Wan'Dale is just shifty, dude. You get it. There's going to be like little arrow routes, pivot routes, things of that nature in the red zone, outside the numbers, inside the numbers, between the hashes, that I think the Giants are going to have schemed up for him, and he has enough talent to make a couple guys miss and then just like launch himself over the pylon or launch himself into the end zone for a touchdown. I'm going to stick, though, with under.
Just slight under for me. Okay, Darius Slayton over under 55 catches.
55 catches, I'm going to go slight under here with Darius Slayton splitting time with Jalen Hyatt because I think Jalen Hyatt's going to have a little bit more of a role than maybe I originally anticipated going into training camp.
Same. I just don't think he'll have enough snaps for it. How about 650 yards?
Again, slightly under.
Same, just because of the snaps, but I think he'll do a lot with his snaps, and I think he's going to have another high yards per catch, yards per target, good separation rates on the advanced metrics. The guy's been good on film for years, and people just kind of sleep on him because the whole passing offense has been so dead in the water, but he's good when he gets his chances. I just don't know if he'll get enough chances this year.
Exactly. And for context with Darius Slayton, too, Darius Slayton had 50 catches last year, 51 in 2022, 50 in 2020, only had 26 in 2021, and then 48 in 2019. But he's gone over 700 yards every year except for that 2021 season. So he's, a deep threat kind of guy, has 19 career touchdowns. 8 of them did come in 2019. But that brings us to how many touchdowns do you think Darius Slayton will have? And
I'll say this
I had down as 4.
Yeah, and I'll answer and say, and I'll say this about the yards. Based on what you just broke down, Nick, it would seem like pretty obvious. Like, oh, well, then he'll definitely go over the yardage again because the passing offense is going to be more explosive. But the difference is they didn't have Nabers in this offense in previous seasons. So I think that really is going to lead to him just not playing as much. But 4 TDs, I actually think I'm going to go push on here. I think he's going to get to 4, maybe even 5 TDs. I would go lean toward over. The thing about Slayton is he makes freaking big plays. He had 2 long bomb TDs the last 2 games of the season in week 17 and week 18 with Tyrod Taylor last year. They were like 70 and 65 preseason game.
I think they were both 80, actually.
They're both 80. That's insane. The preseason game, he came inches away from another touchdown catch with Jones. I think they turned that into a rushing TD, but it was very close.
Sorry.
What?
One was 69. The one against Philly was 69. The one against the Rams was 80. 80-yard bomb.
80-yard bomb.
Beautiful play by Tyrod, too.
That was one of the best throws I've ever seen by a Giants quarterback in my entire lifetime outside of Eli Manning. Including him, it would probably be in like the top 10. And doubt it, go look at it. There's cut-ups of it everywhere. I put it on Twitter a million times. That was an insane throw by Tyrod Taylor. He like launched that thing like 60 in the air on a line, like it hit the receiver in stride, outside shoulder. Kind of an insane throw by Tyrod. Tyrod is like the most underrated explosive arm in the NFL, I would say. People view him as like not a good explosive throw. He has all sorts of things he does wrong in his game. His short accuracy isn't great. He gets injured a lot, blah, blah, blah. Bury him for that all you want. Make some stupid decisions like the Bills game. But as far as just his explosive arm talent goes, it's kind of insane.
It really is. It really is. The ball jumps out of his arm. And like, again, man, he's like 6'1", like under 200 pounds.
Have that kind of arm talent at 6'1" makes no sense.
Yeah, he launches it, dude. He gets his hips in it, man. All torque, baby.
Yeah, remember we had Sims on and he broke it down for us. Matt Sims broke it down. He's like, the way that Tyrod Taylor throws, it's special to watch because he can generate so much torque and explosion from such a small body type. It's kind of insane. But, that helped Slayton. I still think Slayton's going to get there with Jones because he has that rapport with Jones and he scored a lot of touchdowns with him. So I'm going to take the push/over for that.
Yeah, I got aggressive with this one. Didn't know exactly how to phrase it. So we can deconstruct this. I just have tight end 1. Now, if we want to combine whoever's starting at tight end here with Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger, because I don't think either is going to reach the numbers that I have listed, but both of them together will. But let's just say Theo Johnson or Daniel Bellinger plays over 65% of the snaps and is out there on a lot of passing downs. I have 40 catches for tight end 1 over under.
I'll go under.
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well because, again, I think tight end 2 is going to also
Right.
feed in the double Y sets. We're going to see more 12 personnel than I think we also expect. I think we're going to see a lot of 11 personnel, like a lot of NFL teams do employ, but there's going to be 12 personnel. And they're going to throw and work the play action passing attack out of 12 personnel because it's something Daniel Jones has done a decent job at through his career. So I'm going to go, though, under 40 catches for tight end 1. What about 450 yards?
That one's tough, especially if they're utilizing him, whoever that may be, Bellinger or Theo, in the screen game, which could give extra free yardage.
Which they will.
I'm still going to go under. Just too many different tight ends will be on the field.
Yeah, it's going to be under for me as well. Daniel Bellinger had just under 300 yards his rookie season, but again, he missed several games after he got punched in the eye against Jacksonville. So something maybe, but this offense is completely different than it was 2 years ago. And then I have 3.5 touchdowns.
I'm going to go over for this one.
I think I'd rather, not to cut you off, man. I think I'd rather just set a number and say, will the tight end room have more than 6.5 touchdowns?
I would take under for that, probably.
I don't know. I think Mannertz gets like 1 or 2 silly ones where we're like, Chris Mannertz, like Chris Myrick used to do all the time, like those kind of touchdowns. And then I can see Theo having 3 and Daniel having 2 or 3. So I think I might take over on the 6.5.
No, I'm taking over on that. I changed my mind. I think that, look, with Nabers in the mix here, there's going to be these nice opportunities for these tight ends in the red zone to be in one-on-one coverage, big body type. Theo is the one who I think could really score a lot of touchdowns for the Giants this year with his body type and how fast he's picked up the offense. So I'll take the over.
And remember back in 2022, how much Mike Kafka and Brian Dable schemed specifically the tight end position in the red zone for Daniel Bellinger, a rookie. Okay. And we have now, he's a vet. You have Mannertz, who's a vet, not necessarily a receiving guy, but no one's going to really be paying too much attention to him when he is out there. Andrew Thomas could catch a freaking touchdown. Does that count as a freaking tight end touchdown when he's a big offensive lineman who's an eligible receiver? I don't know. And then Theo Johnson, who, again, I think is a talented red zone threat. So I'm going to go over for that 6.5 number. I think that's better than going like, who's going to play tight end 1? I don't know.
I agree. Let's flip to the other side of the ball. Dexter Lawrence, 6.5 sacks, over under.
I'm going over 6.5 sacks for Dexter Lawrence.
And then 71.5 pressures, and I'll do mine right after yours. Over under on that.
Over 71.5 pressures for Dexter Lawrence as well.
I'm going to go slight under on these, unfortunately. I think that this defense will give them, as a unit, more opportunities to get sacks, but I'm a little not nervous, Nick, but maybe cautiously not optimistic, I guess would be the term, of how much more often we saw Dexter Lawrence not lined up over the center so far in training camp. I
think that can help him, though.
You think that's going to help him?
Not necessarily. So let me explain. So Dexter Lawrence thrives over the center because it forces that center to basically block Dexter Lawrence, anchor down. And I felt like Wink Martindale did a very good job ensuring that he had one-on-one matchups against that center. I think a similar thing is going to happen with Dexter Lawrence aligning at the 4-eye shade with Brian Burns out wide. And that's going to force this poor damn offensive guard to kick out and try to reach Dexter Lawrence as a 4-eye shade, moving laterally while Dexter Lawrence is pushing him back. It's going to force so many full slides and half slides. Now, will that result in sacks for Dexter Lawrence? I'm not entirely sure. I think he's talented enough to where he can dominate that matchup. And even if they do slide in that direction, it's going to, he can still defeat that. But Brian Burns is going to have that one-on-one matchup to that side with Dexter Lawrence. That's a wide defender. That tackle, completely stressed. Probably going to have some attention paid in that direction through either a tight end or a running back. But who also might benefit from this is Kayvon on the other end. Because with that half slide or that full slide towards Dexter Lawrence, it's going to have a lot of one-on-one matchups for Kayvon Thibodeau, who honestly hasn't really come close to, I think, the potential we expected of Kayvon Thibodeau when he came out of Oregon. I know he had double-digit sacks last year, but it wasn't like he was beating some of the above average or even very good tackles in the National Football League. He was kind of feasting against middling tackles. I think there's still a lot that I think we can see from Kayvon, and we might be able to see it because he's going to be in such a prime position in 3rd and 6+ because how Shane Bowen is going to employ the overload one side of the line of scrimmage with the talent of Dexter Lawrence at a 4-eye and then Brian Burns at a wide defender. And I think I'm not sure if that's going to result in a lot of sacks for Dex, not to, do a whole 360 here, but I really think it's going to help the entire defense, but I'm still taking over on both of those.
I like it. I'm going to take a slight under because I think more so what you broke down might be what ends up happening, which is, it leads to more sacks, I guess, just box score production from the rest of the Giants players, while still he's just as effective, Dexter Lawrence. And we'll see what happens there. How about Brian Burns numbers? Sacks over under 8.5, 59 pressures.
I have over on both of these.
I'm also with you on that. I think Brian Burns is going to destroy these numbers potentially, especially the pressures number. I just think he's such a good fit for the system. And I think it helps him so much to have Dexter Lawrence next to him. Look, the Panthers had that one dude that Dave Gettleman liked. I forgot his name, the D tackle, Derek Brown. It was like a good player. I think he's turned into a pretty solid player. He's nowhere near Dexter Lawrence, especially moving laterally, especially as a pass rusher. They're not even in remote conversation. Now Brian Burns has that. And that's going to be a difference maker for him. So I'm taking the over on both of these.
For context with Burns had over 59 pressures once, and that was in 2022, but he had 51 in 2021, and he had 57 in 2020. Last year, he only had 40 in 379 pass rushing reps, but the sacks he's always had over, I think, 8 or 7.5. PFF counts the halves as full, so it gets a little murky with that. And I think, again, being used wide with Dexter Lawrence on your side, it's going to just allow him to feast on one-on-one matchups. And I'm looking forward to watching that. So Brian Burns over on both.
Kayvon Thibodeau sacks over under 7.5 and 52.5 pressures.
Yeah, 7.5. I'm going to take slight under on that, but I do think he's going to be an effective player who's going to have more than 52.5 pressures. So I'm going to go under on the sacks of 7.5, over on the pressures of 52.5.
So sacks, I'm definitely going to go over on personally, just because I think he does a good job of closing and getting those sacks. He's done so in his first 2 years. The pressures one is a little more interesting to me because he just has to become a more effective pass rusher, I think, to beat that number. But he does have so much more to work with this year in the sense that, like, he has Brian Burns across from him. And I think he has a system that's going to help him because I don't think he's going to stop completely dropping into coverage, but I think that's going to change a little bit. And he's going to drop less into coverage than he ever did under Wink Martindale, which means more opportunities.
Let's see. With Kayvon, so I wanted to run this by you. By the way, his PFF picture, he has glasses on, looks very fly. He dropped into coverage 84 times last year and 71 times in 2022. I think he's going to drop into coverage probably around that, if not more. Because I don't know if the Giants want to drop Brian Burns that frequently off into coverage. We've heard Burns vocalize that he was a little displeased with dropping into coverage as frequently as he did with the Carolina Panthers.
Right.
And we know Shane Bowen is going to run a lot of simulated pressures. And if you run simulated pressures, you're dropping somebody into coverage.
Right.
In the red zone, it might be Dexter Lawrence, which is like crazy, but we saw him do that with Jeffrey Simmons very frequently over in Tennessee. So I think if one of those guys had to drop off in the coverage, you're dropping Kayvon off if you have your choice. Obviously, you don't want to establish a very notable trend that can be exploited by an offense. But Brian Burns, at this point in their careers, is a much better pass rusher than Kayvon Thibodeau.
You're right. I just kind of hope this coordinator is going to do it less because I understand the value of simulated pressures, but I also like the idea of just letting your front four win and seeing what happens there.
Yeah, it's fair enough too.
All right, let's get to the last one, and then we're going to do some season-long win-loss predictions. Team total interceptions, 16.5.
So 2022, when the Giants won a playoff game, they had 6 interceptions. They ranked last in the NFL. Oof. Last year, when the Giants were one of the laughing stocks of the league, they had 18 interceptions. So again, it's a very fluky number. Now, 16.5, I'm going to take slight under, but they're going to have more than 6 interceptions. I think they'll have like 12, 13, 14. I think a lot of them will be by the safety position. And I'm hoping that Deonte Banks can take a step forward and get 3, 4, 5 interceptions. I'm not entirely sure of that. Maybe some of the simulated pressures, Kayvon or Brian Burns come away with 1 or 2. I'm going to take slight under though. What about you?
I'm going to go over here. I think this is a bet on the system and a bet on my belief in this pass rush with Brian Burns added to the pass rush. So I think we're going to get about 6 combined, maybe 7 from Adoree and Deonte Banks alone. I think we're going to get about 6, maybe 7, maybe 8 combined from the safeties. Let's say 7 and 8 there, 15. And I think Bobby Okereke is going to chip in with a few. And I think that's going to get us to that number. Maybe Drew will have one. Maybe Drew won't. He didn't have any at Kentucky. We'll see if he can get some in the NFL game. But I think I'm just going to go slight over with Bobby chipping in maybe 2, maybe 3. Bobby Okereke, that is. And then the safeties and corners really, the big safeties, the big 2, and the corners really doing their job.
Okay, Dan, look, we did the ceiling podcast. We talked about how everything could go right. We've been called negative people before when it comes to the New York Giants. So now, for the third year in a row, I don't know if we did it in the previous seasons. Maybe we did, but the Giants were just so bad that we drank all of those memories away. Let's do our record predictions for the 2024 New York Giants.
Well, I think the funny thing is the duality of the situation, because you mentioned we've been called like haters of the Giants or negative. We've also been called the complete opposite, like the homers.
Yes.
And so it's just, I love when you brought that up, the duality of being a Giants, analyst and talking about this team and how some people think you're negative, some people think you're positive. But I think the good thing is the majority of the people who listen to our show think that we're objective, and that's why they come back and they listen to us, which is really great. Record prediction. So I nailed it, and I got on freezing cold takes in 2022 because Adam Mazer was like, Dan's predicting 9 wins. This team is going to win 5 at most. And the Giants did win 9 games. And I had a breakdown as to why. It touched on a few things from a schematic standpoint, but it touched on one major thing too. Touched on the schedule. That schedule in 2022 was very favorable. The schedule in 2023 was less favorable. The schedule in 2024, Nick, is not very favorable. Playing the AFC North is a nightmare, is a straight up nightmare, both from the fact that you're going to have to play some games in the cold. You're playing against a lot of good defenses. And these days you're playing against Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. And I don't think Deshaun Watson is good, but I think Kevin Stefanski's a goddamn, sorry, I can't believe I said that. I apologize. A damn good coordinator and a damn good play caller. And he proved that with Joe Flacco last year. So that's tough. They're also playing some tough contests in the NFC as well. And the division, while it got a little worse, I think, with the Dallas Cowboys potentially falling up from a depth standpoint, it's a little harder when you have to face Jaden Daniels instead of Sam Howell. Let's be honest about the situation.
Yep.
So I don't think that sweep is as guaranteed as it was against Washington. So unfortunately, Nick, I am going with 7-10 as my final prediction. I worked through the schedule. I gave them some games that I didn't think they'd win, but then I took away some games that they might end up losing against just tough spots. Like even some of their easier games, Nick, like Pittsburgh. It's in Pittsburgh at night. Like that is an annoying spot to go to Pittsburgh at night. Even Seattle, who I don't think is going to be that great of a team because their O-line. It's in Seattle, one of the toughest places to play. So they have a lot of tougher spots. Atlanta's on their schedule, and I think Atlanta is going to win that division and maybe win 11 and 12 games. I'm very high in Atlanta over this year, so that I didn't love either. It just came down to the schedule for me, man. It's a tough schedule, and I think the Giants will be better than people think as a football team using like you said earlier with Daniel Jones. Everybody's counting against us, back against the wall. Nobody believes us. I think helps football teams, but the schedule is just too tough for me, so 7-10.
7-10 is fair. I am right in that ballpark. I actually have them going 8-9, though. I have them with one more win. I think all of the points that you made are very accurate. They are playing the NFC South, though. So you have the Carolina Panthers, who I think will be better than a lot of people expect. I think Bryce Young is probably going to have a slight bounce back year with Dave Canales as his head football coach. I think the Saints are a tire fire. I think the Bucs are a beatable team. You're right about Washington. That's not going to be as easy as a sweep. I still think they are talent-wise probably the worst team in the division. The Giants can probably make an argument there, but I feel like New York should win a game, if not sweep them. I'm not going to go with the sweep. Let's go with one game. I think the Giants can beat Philadelphia and Dallas with if everything doesn't go like 100% correctly, but we've seen them compete against Philadelphia last season. Philadelphia, there's still some weird stuff surrounding that team. I think they're going to bounce back this season, but Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts didn't talk for like the latter half of last. So there was a lot of weirdness surrounding him. I'm surprised that Sirianni is back. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants can steal one of those games, maybe even 2 against Dallas and Philadelphia. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked. So I have them being competitive into December and then falling off and not making the playoffs and winning 8 games, losing 9. And overall, finding themselves in a position where they're picking in the teens and they're just like, whoa, what do we do now with our quarterback situation who plays? And it's going to be one of those situations, but I'm hoping that the Giants can win a little bit more than that and maybe go to the playoffs and we can have another fun 2022 type season. I have them slightly below that though at 8-9.
Yeah, it's interesting because just to touch on this a little bit more in depth, I almost feel like the Giants have a better chance of stealing one of the games against Philly than they do against Dallas this year, even though I think Philly might be an overall better team. I think that we've seen over the course of the history of watching this franchise, Giants don't really and haven't really had any answer for Dak Prescott at any point. If you look at Dak Prescott's numbers against the Giants, it's bonkers, dude. Like he has lit us the F up. And that includes games like last year where it's 40-0 and he didn't even have to throw for a full half. So if you're looking at raw numbers, it's not even going to tell the true story. The opposite has kind of been true about Jalen Hurts. Patrick Graham found a game where he stopped Jalen Hurts. Last year, Wink Martindale found a game where he stopped Jalen Hurts. The Giants have shut down Hurts 2 games. That's more than they can say about Dak Prescott, despite facing Dak. And they did shut down Dak once, the game in 2016, when Janoris Jenkins shut down Dez Bryant.
Yeah, but I mean, that was almost 10 years ago.
That was almost 10 years ago, 8 years ago, which is insane. So it's really not important or relevant at this point. But that just kind of goes to show that, like, they've been playing Dak for a while, and he's really torched them up. And I think Dak's processing is just too lightning quick and too good, to be completely honest, for what the Giants can put up this year at corner and at safety and just overall in the secondary and the second level, the linebackers. He beats you to the spot with his mind. So that's my thing.
This might not mean anything at all, but Shane Bowen defeated Dak Prescott at the end of the 2022 season, 13-27. So the Titans scored 27 points. Obviously, the teams are so different. I'm not sure if Derrick Henry ran, although I don't really remember the context, but I do know, just looking briefly at the stats, Dak threw 2 picks against a Shane Bowen coach defense. So maybe there's something there, but they didn't meet too frequently because it was an AFC team. And I look at Dallas, man. Dallas, to me, took us, like, losing Dan Quinn is a big part. Now they bring in Mike Zimmer. I have a lot of respect for Mike Zimmer and what Mike Zimmer can do. And I think Mike Zimmer can be a very big headache for Daniel Jones. But I don't think those games are as unwinnable as in previous seasons, because one of the primary reasons why Dallas just bitched the New York Giants isn't just Dak. It was Dak, but it was also the Giants just having nothing on the offensive line to protect Daniel Jones.
Right.
So I think that's going to be improved. Containing Micah Parsons, very difficult thing to do. Will the Giants do that? I don't think so. But I think it will slow it down and give the Giants at least a fighter's chance to maybe steal one of those games. I'm hoping, man. Like, I'm sick of losing to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sick of losing to the Eagles in Philadelphia. The Giants need to seize some of these victories at this point, man, because it's been a laughing stock for almost a decade plus now, where the Giants have just been getting their asses kicked against these 2 teams in their division. And these are the 2 teams in our division that we're actual rivals with. I look at Washington. Yeah, they're our rivals, but, like, you know, like, whatever. Like, no, I don't really personally care too much about Washington. I don't know about you. Those other 2 teams, I have strong disdain for those 2 teams.
But that will change for me if Jaden Daniels is amazing. If Jaden Daniels breaks out at the NFL level, we will quickly learn to hate the Washington football team, because they will be winning a lot of games. And that's just a reality. Washington has been as bad as we have been these last 10 years. So it's not easy. You know, it's easy to not hate them. The Dallas and the Eagles, they've been good these last 10 years when we've sucked. So it's easier to hate them.
I just think, look, they have in the last 10 years, just the one.
Yeah, they haven't won. That's the difference. And Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl since they were VHS tape, since we were watching stuff on VHS. So really, it's been a while for these franchises. But ultimately, within the division, they've been beating the Giants. So there's been closer losses. There's just too many of those that don't go the Giants' way since Eli retired. And that's just how it's been. But look, if they only, let's say they do split with Dallas and they split with the Eagles, if they only split with Washington, Nick, which is possible, that's 3 wins there. I think it's probably fair to say they'll only win half of the games against the AFC North and the NFC South, and that's probably being generous. That's 7. So it's just going to come down to those swing games, and that's the difference. But look, the over-under on the Giants is 6.5 in Vegas. You probably get plus odds on the over, because a lot of people are betting the under. Seems like it's not a bad bet. The only thing is, like, if Daniel Jones does get bent for that injury guarantee, it's going to get wonky, and, like, it's going to be a sweat that you're not going to want to have to make.
There are some variables in there that really will make you sweat your ass off. And the swing games are Seattle, which that's difficult up in Seattle. I think Ben Grubb's going to do well with that offense. And Mike McDonald is a defensive-minded head coach who just coached one of the best defenses in the league. So I think Seattle could actually be one of those surprise teams this year, because I'm also a big believer in Geno, as I know you are too. Geno Smith is a very underrated quarterback. And then Indianapolis. And it's just like, it's hard to really peg down how good Indianapolis is going to be. And that's like, what, a week 17 or week 16 game? Is Anthony Richardson even going to be playing at that point? Like, his physical.
But if not, is that even, like, is it great? Because I think Joe Flacco's kind of legit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just believe in Shane Steichen.
I was just about to say
that's my main thing there. Yeah.
Steichen's crazy, man. Like, he's like, look at what he was able to do with Gardner Minshew.
And with Jalen Hurts, who hasn't really been the same since he left.
Yeah. Again, though, that's a very weird situation with her. Like, I buy into Jalen Hurts as a talent and as a leader, especially. And it's easy for me, I guess, to sit here and say I don't buy into Nick Sirianni. It's just Nick Sirianni. as an outsider, seems to rub a lot of people the wrong way. And when that
I also don't really get what he's offering because he was supposed to be an offensive mind, right? And like their offense sucked under him last year when they lost Steichen.
Yeah, I mean, well, they lost Steichen and Gannon, and that was, I think we brought it up on the podcast too. We're like, if there's a team that's going to take a step back, it's the Eagles. We still thought they would make the playoffs. They did, and they started hot, so it looked bad, but then it just crumbled once teams got tape on them because they lost their defensive and their offensive coordinator. They went to the Super Bowl with those guys. You lost them. You try to replace them, and it was an absolute tire fire. And now you're bringing Kellen Moore, and that's going to be interesting.
And Vic Fangio.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, I don't think they're going to be as bad because of that. But the head coach, there is some stink there. And I wouldn't be shocked if that stink remains, if it smells like crap early in the season.
Sirianni is hot seat. He's like on a top hot seat.
I know. And you have two guys there who Vic Fangio has been a head coach.
Yeah, you could do interim for either of them. Right.
Exactly. And then Kellen Moore, he's a respected offensive coordinator at this point. So it should be interesting what's going to happen in the NFC East. I would love to see that. I mean, I still see Nick Sirianni's face doing that at when they beat the Giants in the divisional round, and he was doing that like, if you're watching on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about. That was the most punchable moment you've ever seen from a coach.
I think his most punchable moment was that was one of them. He has many you can put up there, but his most punchable was last year. I think it was, did he beat the Vikings or somebody?
The Chiefs, I think.
The Chiefs, when he went into the tunnel and he just did whatever he did there. He just looks like, he's just such a, like, it looks like the kind of guy who is, like, you know, when they thought Gannon was going to be a terrible coach for the Cardinals because he had that first interview where he's like explosive, and he was weird, and everybody was kind of like, "Oh, this is the guy you don't want because he's not relatable." I think he did a damn good job coaching that team last year, considering everything they went through, and I think he's going to pretty much do a good job this year. The defense is horrific, so he might not have no talent on that defense, but whatever. But he's going to try to make the most of it. But like, I think he actually kind of relates to his players, but I don't think Nick Sirianni relates to his players at all.
I think you're accurate with that latter point. I can't really speak to Gannon relating to him, but I'll say this much. When we had Ed Smith on, Irv Smith's uncle, who covers the Cardinals, he brought up Drew Petzing. This was when Drew Petzing was very young.
Yeah, that was a great call by him.
Yeah, we watched week 1 and we were like, oh, they did some interesting stuff. You know, they had Josh Dobbs as their quarterback against the Giants, who wasn't there much longer, and they were able to move the football against Giants. You could say, oh, maybe that's not saying all that much, but throughout the season, they had a pretty respectable offense with their backs against the wall and a returning Kyler Murray from a torn ACL. So I look at Drew Petzing and I'm like, that guy knows how to coach offense. But remember watching their offensive line and being like, who's this center that they had who had like a Swedish last name? Or like, this guy's blocking, like he's doing solid. Yeah, he's doing like he's not dominating Dexter Lawrence, but he's like not getting embarrassed like we expected.
As he should have, right? Yeah, it was crazy. Like, and I think it's like he comes from the Shanahan tree, if I'm not mistaken, Petzing. And that tree, man, they just find it, like, that's the tree I want. Like, they find ways to create run schemes that work regardless of the offensive line. Miami's doing it. Arizona's doing it. You don't need these star big names on your O-line. Even San Fran's O-line is like falling apart outside of Trent Williams, and it doesn't matter. They're still going to be an effective offense because of Shanahan. And I just feel like that's something the NFL is like, that whatever that system has right now, they have a little bit of an up. Even like, you know, and I love Brian Dable and what he runs, but I think you still get a little bit of an upgrade with the Shanahan tree because you get that run game based on the scheme that kind of negates the O-line to an extent.
And I'm hoping, Dan, that we can see that now a little bit, because what does Brian Dable, and this is kind of coach speak, but we've heard Brian Dable talk about self-scouting after every single season. And what have we seen in training camp and in preseason? We've seen some wrinkles in the rushing attack, stuff that we saw a little bit in 2022. But I think with the addition of Jakob Johnson, who's going to have a role when he's promoted off the practice squad to the active roster, I think you're going to see some fullback usage. I think you're going to see some of the motion. I think that's going to allow the passing attack to maybe gain a slight edge against those intermediate defenders, man. Because if you run like that orbit motion with Wan'Dale Robinson off a run, hand the football off, get 3 yards, get 4 yards, get 5 yards, and now you throw that bubble. Those linebackers are pinched up on that 3rd, 4th play. And then once you actually throw it to Wan'Dale Robinson, you allow him to pick up extra yards. That can be an extra first down here or there because it was in those linebackers' brain that, oh, well, that orbit, we don't really have to account for that because I saw that 3 times before and they ran the football. And that's marrying the run with the pass. That's one of the ways you do it. And I think Dable's going to do that. We've seen Shanahan, we've seen McVay. They all do this very well. So I'm hoping that we see even more creative wrinkles that haven't been exposed in preseason or really even in training camp when the media was available from Brian Dable, now that they have a functional offensive line and a couple more weapons at their disposal.
I like it, Nick. I definitely like it. All right, that's our over-unders on stats and our season prediction for the Giants in 2024. We hope they beat this prediction, but we're trying to make this as objective and accurate as possible when we look back. But look, the Giants are a type of team that have always been at their best when their back is against the wall. 07, when Tiki said Eli shouldn't, Tiki said what he said about Eli. 11, they didn't really have high expectations going into that year. 2016, they didn't have high expectations at all, and they made the playoffs with Eli. And then 2022, again, predicted to be like they are this year, one of the worst teams. I just feel like psychologically it does help you as a football team when you're nobody believes in us, like that type of stuff. So I think they're going to be better than we expect and than people expect. It's just a matter of can they get over that hump of becoming a 7 or 8 win team like you or I think, and becoming that 10 or 9 or 11 win team.
Let's say this one thing. Okay, last year when we did our record predictions, if you were to tell Dan Schneider and Nick Filato that Andrew Thomas would have been lost for most of the season,
No
that
Darren
Daniel
Waller
Jones would tear their ACL, that Darren Waller was a non-factor, that Saquon Barkley had a high ankle sprain for a part of this. If you were to tell us all of those things, we would not have said we wouldn't have said they won 6 games. We'd be like, they're going to have like the first overall pick. 4, 2, 3. But the coaching allowed them to do that with an undrafted rookie, right? So I think the coaches are another reason why I'm a little bit more optimistic than some others. And that's just buying into Brian Daboll being a play caller too, which he was not last season or in 2022. I think we could see a new refreshed look at how Brian Daboll can call the offense, because this is his offense and you can entrust that and delegate that all you want to Mike Kafka. But now you're possibly getting the most out of your offense because you're the one who's actually doing the situational play calling.
Did you see him asked about that at the presser yesterday or the day before?
Finally,
so annoyed.
Yeah. Who was it? It was Ronan or Leonard?
Ronan asked him, and Daboll so Ronan asked him. Daboll did his thing where he beat around the bush and didn't say he was going to call the plays. Then he turned his head and looked at another reporter like this, and then Ronan was like, "But you didn't confirm if you're going to call the plays." The look on Daboll's face is he rolled his eyes back to Ronan for a second. Is like, "Yeah, I'm doing it," and went quickly to the next reporter. It was just like, "Dude, you are on my last nerve." It felt like that at least.
I feel like Jordan. I feel like Jordan gets under his skin sometimes.
It does a little. Jordan, I really like Jordan. I think he's a good reporter for the Giants. He's been there for so long. I just thought it was a funny interaction. Daboll was just I'm so fed up with this guy right now in that moment. So that's how it felt, at least. All right. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in Big Blue Banter. Big show coming tomorrow. We're bringing on a guest that's been on the show before, Sean Syed, who is one of the best X's and O's film evaluators in the game. And he's broken down Vikings tape for us before. He's going to break it down for us again. He had a great call 2 years ago in 2022 when the Giants played the Vikings about what the Vikings would do in the run game and how the Giants would be able to stop that. And they were able to stop that. He was right about that. Let's see what he has in store for us now to preview the Vikings. We're going to go deep, X's and O's. Nick and I will make our predictions for the first week of the season as well. So all that is coming on tomorrow's show. Have a great rest. And I don't know when this is going to drop, so I probably shouldn't have said tomorrow, but we will find out. Nick is the man there, but it's okay. Have a great rest of your night, day, whoever knows when you're going to watch morning, if you're listening in the morning or watching in the morning. We'll talk to you soon, and we're excited about it.